What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name's Kyle. We're doing a quick episode tonight. The title of this one is 5 Things I Learned from Doing Over 130 plus best ball drafts in June. I got wild with it. I did a bunch of a low-cost best ball contests across DraftKings, Underdog, and Drafters. And I racked up a ton of volume on these drafts, and basically I made an article. You guys can find it in the link. I guess there's a link in the description, but it is available on the fantasyfellowship.com for free. You guys can check it out there. I'm basically just going to kind of read it and show you guys what I have learned doing all these best ball drafts, man. And if you guys stay to the end, I will open up and show you guys some of my most owned players, my player exposures across some of these websites. So we'll do that, and yeah, let's get into it. I start with the little, the bullet point list here. Number one, I love the late round tight ends. Number two, I prefer one elite RB early. 3, some teams are easier to stack than others. Number 4, you want 5 pass catchers in the top 100 picks. Number 5 is stockpile running backs in the 9th and 12th round. Let's start with number 1, the late round tight ends. Basically, tight end is the least important position. If you have Travis Kelce, you could maybe make an argument for that. But after Travis Kelce, everyone else is kind of like, what are we doing here at tight end? So obviously Kelce is a first-round pick this year. I'm fine with taking him. When I was getting, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th pick overall, I would take Kelce a handful of times. But I did prefer taking wide receiver if I could, or Austin Eckler in that range. And this is not to say I like Mark Andrews, late 3rd round. I like TJ Hawkinson, late 4th, early 5th round. I like George Kittle. You can get Kittle at the end of the 5th and the early 6th. And then Dallas Goedert is pretty good value too. He sometimes dips to the late 7th or to the early 7th round, late 6th round. And when I'm getting Mark Andrews, Hawkinson, Kittle, and Goddard, I'm usually trying to stack those guys. And they are pretty lately, it's been pretty easy to stack Lamar with Mark Andrews. It's easy to get Justin Jefferson and then take TJ Hawkinson when you have the first pick. And then with Kittle, it's easy to get Debo, maybe Ayuk, and then it's easy to get Purdy at the end. And then Dallas Goedert too. Like when you take Jalen Hurts, in the 2nd or 3rd round, it's easy to line up Goddard there. So I like stacking those guys. But the first batch of tight ends that I like to target, it's going to be Pat Freiermuth and David Njoku. Both these guys are being drafted in the 9th round of their drafts right now. And what's cool about this is when you get Njoku in the 9th, you can easily get Deshaun Watson in the 7th or the 8th round. So, when it comes to the 7th round and you're looking around, I don't have a quarterback yet, I don't have a tight end yet, I'm going to just sneak a little Deshaun Watson in there in the 7th or the 8th, and then I can bring back David Njoku in the 9th. And then who knows, maybe you can even set yourself up for Amari Cooper earlier, but it's very easy to fit David Njoku in with some stacks. And I have a good feeling about the Cleveland Browns offense this year. I think they're going to let it fly a little bit more than we are accustomed to. So I like Njoku. If I had to choose one of the two, I think I'm taking Pat Freiermuth. The dude, I think he was top 6 last year in targets, receptions, yards, and he just only caught 2 touchdowns. So if the touchdowns swing back to his way, if he ends up catching 7 or 8 touchdowns this year, he's a guy that has top 5 upside at the position, because he's going to be there with the targets, the yards, and the receptions. And it's basically just, if the touchdowns are there, you're getting yourself something pretty nice with Pat Freiermuth. And it's also pretty easy to get Pat and stack him with one of Deontay or George Pickens. And then you can get Kenny Pickett real late as your QB too. So I love both of these guys right now in the 9th round. Sometimes I dip into the 10th round, and that's just really, really good value, because I feel strongly about both these guys being locked into top tight end roles. And then so those guys are more mid-round tight ends. I think the late-round tight ends are the ones that I've been hammering a ton, and that's guys like Chigo Okonkwo, Gerald Everett, Jake Ferguson, Trey McBride, Hunter Henry, Jawan Johnson, Taysom Hill, Tyler Conklin, Noah Fant, Irv Smith, Dawson Knox. And why I like grabbing these late round tight ends is because when you get to round 15, 16 and beyond, it's like you probably already have a quarterback or two, and you could easily, if you have Herbert, I'm going to target Gerald Everett. If I have Dak, I'm going for Ferguson. Especially Derek Carr too. If I have Derek Carr, I'm going for Jawan or Taysom. Aaron Rodgers, you can get Conklin. All these guys are really easy to stack with their QBs late. And to be honest, like when you get real deep in those drafts, I mean, we're looking at receivers that are either the 3rd or 4th best receiver on their team. You're looking at running backs that are, for sure the 2nd or the 3rd option on their team. You can get a quality starting tight end late. So the thing that I've been doing is sure, if I can start my draft with one of the top tight ends, I'm fine with it, especially if it's stacked. But otherwise, I like to try and get Pat or David Njoku. And if I can't, I'm just gonna take a bunch of these late round tight ends. So that is my number one thing that I've learned. Late round tight ends is my preferred way of navigating that position. Let's move on to number two. This one is one elite running back early, and basically anybody in the first, second, or third round. You got Christian McCaffrey, first running back off the board, Eckler and Bijan, Eckler in the mid first, Bijan in the late first, Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb all kind of go in the middle of the second round right now. Tony Pollard's been sliding a little bit. You can get him at the back of round two. I've gotten him, with the first or second pick in the third round, but then you're pretty much guaranteed Stevenson, Henry, or Josh Jacobs. One of those guys will be there for you in the first few picks of the third round. And it's just crazy because, like, a couple of years ago, man, like there would be 6 or 7, maybe 8 running backs in the first round, and here we are. We're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The top 10 running backs. I mean, you can get Stevenson, Henry, and Jacobs, RBs 8, 9, and 10. You can get them in the early third and sometimes even the late third. I've seen Henry and Jacobs slip to the back end of the third round. So by grabbing one of these guys in the first or second or the third round, it allows you to just have that anchor running back, and then you can continue to chip away at the receiver position, which we'll get to in a second. And then you get to that point where there's a receiver dead zone after the 8th or ninth round. Receivers look kind of ugly. There's a lot of good running backs in that round. So I'm totally cool with grabbing an anchor running back, and then I'm going to build a huge committee for my running back too. And that's how I've been building my build so far. So one elite running back early is something that I got a lot of in these last few days of June. Let's move on to stacks. And this one's a little bit lengthier here. Now, at the top, I did say it's a little bit easier to stack more teams than others. Some teams are difficult. It's super difficult to get AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and Jalen Hurts. It's difficult to do some things like that, but it's really easy to get teams that aren't very good, like Houston, Green Bay, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Denver. These guys all have a player or two that will be useful for fantasy football this year, and you can get their quarterbacks at a pretty cheap discount too. Like we're talking double-digit rounds for all of these guys. And when you grab a Christian Watson in the fourth round or an Aaron Jones, like I'm probably clicking the star button on Jordan Love to see if he's going to be around for me later. And same thing with Pittsburgh, because I like Pat Freiermuth so much and some of the receivers there. It's easy to grab Kenny Pickett as my number 2 or number 3 quarterback. And then a guy like Russell Wilson with Denver, you can grab Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and some other more weapons there for Denver. So these teams, very easy to stack. What I like about Houston is they play the Tennessee Titans 2 times in the final weeks of the fantasy season. And CJ Stroud, he's going to be starting the whole year. I don't have to worry about him, in the QB competition or anything like that. And I think Houston's going to be an interesting team come the end of the year. There's Dameon Pierce there. That's fine. But they got some interesting receivers, whether it's Nico Collins, Robert Woods, Tank Dell, John Mechie, Dalton Schultz. There's a lot of options that you can get late. And I never want to go into the draft thinking I'm going to stack Houston. But the way the draft shakes out sometimes, like I'm looking at like Dalton Schultz or Nico Collins in like the 12th, 13th round. I'm like, okay, I'm going to start to fold in a little bit of Houston as a secondary stack. So very easy to get these kind of teams. But the teams that I love to stack and that are like elite offenses, and it's fairly easy to get these guys, it's the Chargers. The Chargers are easily my favorite elite stack. You can start your draft with Austin Eckler in the first round. Round 3, you're looking at Keenan Allen. You can get Mike Williams in the 4th round, but I don't know if you need both guys. I prefer Keenan Allen in the 3rd. There's some other players in the 4th round that I do like around Mike Williams, but you can easily get Keenan, Mike, and Eckler on the same team. Quentin Johnston. All right, let me get to Herbert. Herbert goes in the 5th round. Sometimes he dips into the 6th, and that's where it feels really good. But it's kind of crazy. Like when you're in your draft and it's snaking, like these Chargers, their ADPs line up very, very nicely. I think right now you have to take Quentin Johnson in the 7th round. He rarely falls into the 8th. I think on DraftKings he does, but not the other 2 sites. And then Gerald Everett's one of my favorite players at the end, in the 13th round. He's a starting tight end, and he's in a huge offense that's going to throw the ball a lot. I mean, I absolutely love what the Chargers' potential is this year with Kellen Moore, a healthy Herbert, and his receivers and offensive line. Chargers, my favorite stack right now. And then the other one here that I like is the Cowboys. And you can argue if you think they're elite or not, but I do think they're gonna put up points. They're in a dome. They're in a fun division. I think the Cowboys, starting with CeeDee Lamb in the 1st, You don't have to get Pollard with Lamb. You're technically reaching on Pollard if you have Lamb. I don't think you need the running back in this case. It makes more sense with Austin Eckler because he's one of the team's leading pass catchers. Same thing with CMC, those elite pass catching backs. I do like to stack them with my QB, but I don't know if Pollard's necessary. Only if there's a big value there. But yeah, you start with CeeDee Lamb, and then you're looking at Brandon Cooks in the 7th, 8th round. Dak Prescott, I like to kind of play. I like to play chicken with Dak Prescott. You can draft him in the 8th round, but there's a lot of times where you can see it coming around the corner, and he falls to the late 9th round sometimes, which is a pretty good deal. And then Gallup, very easy to acquire Michael Gallup. His ADP is like in the 130s right now. And then Jake Ferguson's my favorite tight end there in Dallas. And then Cleveland Brown stacks. I kind of mentioned it earlier with Njoku. You can start your draft with Amari Cooper at the end of round 3. You can come back and get Deshaun Watson in the 7th round. You can turn the corner and get Elijah Moore pretty easily. Njoku in the 9th, Donovan Peoples-Jones late in the 13th. So just, again, I'm probably missing some other stacks. So if you guys want to leave a comment and let me know what other stacks you guys have been getting pretty easily. I mean, I think Baltimore is a pretty good one. Kansas City is interesting because you can get Kelsey, Mahomes, and then some of the late round receivers. I'm probably missing a bunch, but these are just the ones that I have, have stuck out the most to me. So number 3 is stacking. Number 4 is 5 pass catchers in the top 100. The first comment I have here on that is beware the wide receiver dead zone in the 9th through the 12th round. There's kind of a huge drop off in the 8th round. It's usually starting. Cortland Sutton's probably the last guy to signal the start of the wide receiver dead zone, because after him, you're talking guys like Juju, Tyler Boyd, Jameson Williams. It's a bunch of guys with question marks. And in those same rounds 9 through 12, that's where the running backs are that I really like. And number 4, the 5 pass catchers in the top 100, it plays really well with my number 5 note here, which is stockpile running backs in the 9th, 12th. So basically, in the first 8 picks, I want to be hammering at least 4 or 5 wide receivers. And here's the quote, I've seen most best ball bros say you need 5 wide receivers in the top 8 rounds. I want to change that a little bit. I want to say you need at least 4 wide receivers and a tight end. Because if I do get a Goddard, he's a pass catcher. If I get a Njoku, these guys are elite pass catchers. So you want at least 4 receivers and a tight end, or you can hit the 5 wide receivers. I'm cool with that. But with your first 8 picks, you have to have 5 pass catchers. You can grab, 2 running backs and a QB. You have 3 picks for wiggle room there. So that's kind of my thinking. With my first 8 picks, I want 5 pass catchers, and then I want, at least a quarterback or a running back or 2 to figure it out. So that's kind of where I've been looking at. And yeah, getting an elite tight end fits into these builds. But otherwise, man, pound those receivers. You can find some decent receivers in the dead zone. These are some of the guys that I like: Tyler Boyd, Rondale Moore, Sky Moore, Nico Collins, Romeo Doubs, Gallup, and KJ Osborne. But again, in these rounds is where the running backs are. So that's number 4. Let's kind of finish this up and wrap this together with number 5. And that correlates with the one I just mentioned: stockpile running backs in the 9th, 12th. Now, when you get that elite running back early, say you got Austin Eckler, drafted a bunch of receivers, you got Herbert, you got a tight end already, you got 1 running back through 8 rounds, and it's like, okay, we have to go hammer time on the running backs. Guys like James Cook, Javonte Williams, Antonio Gibson, A.J. Dillon, Samaje Perine, Zach Charbonnet, Damian Harris, Brian Robinson, Khalil Herbert, Jamal Williams. You can easily grab like 2. You can either grab 2 or 3 of these guys. Starting in the 9th round, you can grab Cook or Javonte or Gibson. 10th round, you can grab Perine or Charbonnet or Harris. And sometimes in the 11th round, you can get Khalil or Jamal Williams. And I've done this a lot. There's been times where Jamal Williams is my RB4 in this build, and I get a Damian Harris with a Gibson, something like that. So you can grab 2 or 3 of these guys here. And basically, I'm trying to create a competition at my RB2 spot. We already got, Eckler or whoever locked in at the RB1. I want to have 2 or 3 guys that can, have a really good chance of scoring as my RB2. And one thing that looks really good too is Jamal Williams, man. When that Alvin Kamara suspension comes out, Jamal Williams is going to be a starting running back for at least, 4, 6, 8 games. So he's kind of a hot start for me when I need an RB2, and it allows me to take some more rookies and guys that need more time. And then one of my favorite pairings right now is you can grab Javonte Williams in the 9th round. And I know he might not be 100% right away week 1. He might not even play week 1. We'll see. But grabbing Javonte with Jamal Williams, they correlate really, really well. Because say Jamal Williams is starting the first 6 or 8 games for suspended Alvin Kamara, by week 6, 7, 8, Javonte Williams might be, ramping up and getting more involved in that offense. So there's a lot to like from this group. And then it continues, in the 11th and 12th round, you can get a Kamara sometimes in the 10th, 11th, Rashad Penny, Devin Achane, Elijah Mitchell, Jerick McKinnon, Jalen Warren, Kendre Miller, and Tank Bigsby. I think if you can grab one of these guys as your 3, 4, or 5 running back, you're feeling pretty good about it. There's just a lot of depth here because after Tank Bigsby, he kind of is the one that signals to me he kind of ends the running back dead zone. Or I guess he kind of kicks off the running back dead zone because after this 11th, 12th round, it gets kind of ugly at running back again. And that's kind of where I like to rotate back towards wide receivers and the late round tight end. So everything here kind of correlates. And it to me, it just helped my draft process. And it was a lot of fun to write up. So check it out, leave a reply, comment, whatever you guys want. If you guys have questions on it, I'm down to answer. You guys can check it out on thefantasyfellowship.com. If you have questions, you can reach out to me on Twitter, leave a comment on here. Check out the website, subscribe if you're new. And yeah, thank you guys for your time. We'll see you in a future video. Peace.